Jan, aka Glovus. Well, I've welcomed you to the club, the unfortunate one. You lost your father, and our hearts go out to you. Glad all of you are doing the listening this afternoon. And now we get to the conversation shortly. Well. Interesting, isn't it? We're gathering as a family together for the very first time for this year. And so it's a little belated to be saying Happy New Year on the 18th of January. But what can we say? It's been a long 2 weeks where we've had the presidential inauguration. We've had all of the issues around the presidential inauguration. And personally, I was also, involved in a little bit of a thing where people were following me on social media and requesting that I grant them access to some pictures I had posted because, I attended a cocktail and one guest who was there, they expected to be somewhere else in the world to take care of people who had been affected by fire. But it's all good. It's all good. Gentlemen, thank you so much. It's good to see all of you and Happy New Year.
I know he's carrying bus.
Yeah. The LA, the mayor of LA. We went there together. And it's amazing how, my own colleagues, sometimes we try to put a twist to stories and try to create a certain buzz. And it's unfortunate that that cocktail was described as a party when it was really something very small with a limited number of guests and all of that. It's unfortunate.
I thought it was the embassy's way of, having a small session for the delegation from the U.S., just to say, okay, thank you for coming all the way from the U.S. to support Ghana's inauguration. And I think it was blown out. I heard something on Fox News, and it was very racist. But anyway.
And I also take strongly to it. The reason why I haven't entertained any conversations with any of the networks there, quite a number of them have contacted me wanting to know details, wanting to request permission to use my photograph with, the mayor of LA. But I do not believe in that. I do not believe in bad faith and in, twisting things around. So it's just an unfortunate turn of events. And of course, we'd like to say that our hearts go out to all of our friends in LA who have lost their properties. I mean, Bozoma St. John, who is a celebrity marketer and, a big name in the global marketing space. Our own Ghanaian sister also apparently was affected. Her property was affected in the fire.
So Atadina also lost her house. It's unfortunate. But
very, very well. Our hearts go out to them indeed. All right, so let's focus on home and the new direction we want to go. Doc, you were here a couple of weeks ago as we prepared ourselves for the election. Now, all of that is behind us. And what can I say to you and your team? Well, congratulations. Whatever everybody put in has worked because it showed in the polls. And congratulations on your being certified as a theorist. That's a big deal.
Thank you. That's the academic part of
it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Thank you. So we came out of the theory of higher education learning, which has been published by Scopus Index Journal, and clearly that is a big thing.
That's a big deal. Make sure you sign an autograph for me before you get out of the studio.
Clearly, so I'll do exactly that. And I think that I also want to thank you for bringing us together. Myself and my elder brother have been speaking on phone for a while during the campaigns, and today we are seated together in the studio, and that is through your networks. So I want to also say a thank you to your media house for giving all the political parties the opportunity to talk about their manifestos. I think I was here with a representative from the NPP. It does appear that within this period, people of Ghana have thought that it is the NDC that can lead us to the promised land when it comes to sports. That is what reflected in the votes. So we are poised as a government to deliver on the promises that we made during the manifesto, the electioneering period. And clearly so there is the thinking of who would lead the sports ministry, but I think the question shouldn't be who would lead the sports ministry.
What should it be?
The question is, what does government want to do with sports? And then if you are able to know the vision or the thinking of government, then clearly you can say, okay, this person may have the qualities to fit into this portfolio. As one who's been with the Manifesto Committee for the past 4 years, the thinking of the National Democratic Congress now in power is that we are looking at sports not just as a product of recreation. That's why you see sports and recreation. So we're looking at competitive sports. We're looking at sports also as a tool for recreation. And we're also looking at sports as an avenue for creating revenue for the country. Currently, we have just 4% of GDP coming out of sports, and the thinking of the NDC is that we can do more to generate more funds through the sporting sector. So if you look at it from that perspective, hinged on the 10 thematic areas of
Okay, Doc, before you continue, where is this figure of 4% of GDP coming from?
Yeah.
What are we basing it on?
Well, so clearly they as at 2019, ISE had thrown out this figure as the one that represents sports, and since then we haven't had a review.
Okay, and that's 6 years down the line.
Absolutely.
So clearly there is a very pressing need to have some more extensive research done into the area.
Absolutely.
You are in the space.
Yeah, clearly so, and then you can't profile research figures without. Not coming from a certified body like ISE in Ghana. So the reality is, where do we want to get our issues going from now? If that was the figure that we used prior to election, the reality is, where do we want our figures to grow up to from that 4% figure? And that is the conversation that we all need to have from now. And we think that we can take it higher.
Mr. Benunu Mensah, you have been in the thick of administration of sport. You've been confronted with all sorts of challenges and expectations of Ghanaians, because at the end of the day, nobody really cares what happens and what goes wrong. Everybody wants to see the result. Once Ghana is taking part in an international competition, be it a qualifier, be it the main competition, people want to see results because Ghana is there. And nobody thinks about our preparation. Nobody thinks about anything. We have to perform. So we put our teams together. We struggle to travel to these destinations. And then when we get there, there's the expectation to do magic. How do you feel about that phenomenon? I mean, it's a long-running phenomenon, and we're still here. We're in 2025.
Yeah. Thank you, Nat. I think before, let me say a big congratulations to Doc Fedawa and his team. Obviously, they had put up a much better manifesto or agenda for Ghana sports. That's why the NDC got elected. And I think that everybody on the team, from Professor Joshua Alabi, has done so well to convince Ghanaians that the NDC has a much better offer for sports than the NPP. Nat, I also want to emphasize the point Doc made earlier on, that, look, it doesn't really matter who is there. It is what the government wants to do with the sports ministry. The NDC is running the sports ministry based on the promise they have made to Ghanaians, based on a manifesto, based on a document. So whoever goes there, I believe, is going to implement the vision as it's been captured in their manifesto. Now to your question. Now, this has been a long-running challenge that subsequent governments have had. I wouldn't say it was only with the last government. It had happened even in the previous government when we were in power. Expectations of Ghanaians at tournament is so huge, but what we fail to do is to prepare for those tournaments. The biggest problem or the biggest challenge that the sports ministry has always had is funding. We're in a country where a lot of people think that sports is just football. And I don't fault them, because that's all they see. That's all they hear on the news. Media houses would do a sports program, a 1-hour sports program. And all that you talk about, maybe football would take about 40 minutes, and then the other sporting disciplines. So don't fault Ghanaians if they think that sports is just football. Now, funding to the Ministry of Youth and Sports has always been inadequate. We have a brand which is like the Black Stars, which virtually takes out with all the money that comes to the sports ministry. So if at the beginning of the year, Black Star do like 2-3 matches, then that's it. The money is finished. Okay. what I'm seeing the NDC wanting to do now is to think outside the box and probably focus on other means of funding the sports ministry, other means of getting funding into our sports. And some of these things have been clearly captured in the manifesto of the NDC. And I think that if we were to stick to what we've said as a party, if we were to stick to what we've put in our manifesto and be disciplined about implementing them, then, of course, the problem of funding, which has always been a challenge to our national teams, will be a thing of the past. But trust me, it's one thing putting it down, and it's one thing when you get into this ministry, the sports ministry, implementing it. We've had and seen ministers who come in, I'm going to be a minister for all sports. Eventually, our attention and the demands of the time would eventually direct the minister to focus more on football. And that is something that I'm sure the National Democratic Congress would want to guard against, or would very, very much would wish that, whoever is put there as a minister don't eventually get swallowed by the football wind that usually blow all our ministers. If we do that, the other sporting discipline will have enough funding.
But Mr. Nuno Mensah, don't you, this wind that normally blows, I mean, so I'm just imagining if for instance, we had qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations and, we had to appoint a new sports minister. Obviously, when they come in, there'll be a lot of pressure because, number one, there'll be loads of expectations of Ghanaians for the Black Stars to perform there. Secondly, there's a political element where fans are looking forward to being transported in bulk, especially those who are pro the government, to be transported there. I mean, all sorts of things. So sometimes this wind is an inevitable one that carries these ministers along, especially when you get elected around this time.
But you see, if you're a minister who understands sports development, and you understand the fact that you as the leader needs to give equal opportunity to every Ghanaian child who is talented in one sporting discipline or the other, or it is your duty to make sure that the Ghanaian child whose God-given talent is in table tennis is helped by you, the leader, to achieve each or a dream, then yes, you would want to solve the problem of football. And that, you see, most of the time, say if football needs 1 million, the other discipline needs just 1 or say 2, and they can get along with. But that has always been. So that's why I'm saying that it will be very, very critical that whoever is put there as a minister doesn't lose the fact that Ghanaians are talented in so many other disciplines. It's not just football. Yes, if you're not careful, you'll also be engrossed by, you just said, okay, we've qualified for the World Cup, and, everybody will expect that there's a little bit of, movement as far as football is concerned. But if you're up your game, if you're on top of sports issues, then you say, okay, yes, as much as I'm going to invest $1 million in Black Stars, I also need to invest maybe about 500,000 in the other sporting discipline. If you constantly remind yourself of that fact, now I don't think that you'll be carried away by the wind, the football wind that usually blows our ministers away.
So there is a 10-point agenda. There's a 10-point agenda on the manifesto document, and I'll be going through it again. So we start looking at the key areas and or the broader areas which will be broken down, and we look at how this can be achieved. Also, we cannot run away from the conversation about who leads the ministry. I've heard both of you submit that, it doesn't matter who leads the ministry. But, well, I would beg to differ, because who leads the ministry is important. I'll tell you why. Because in terms of the political space and, within the bigger framework of government, sometimes you need somebody with a bit of bite and a bit of influence within the corridors of power, and a bit more access than your other regular cabinet minister or minister, so they can get things done sometimes. And so, and of course, you also need someone who would inspire confidence in the people, because as we speak, we're at an all-time low in terms of our performances locally and internationally as well. But I'd just like to remind everyone, before we go to the next set of questions, about the longest running awards platform in Ghana, and that is the Sports Writers Association of Ghana Awards. It's called the Swag Awards, and it's another time to honor distinguished persons in the sporting space over the last sporting year. And this will be the 49th edition of the awards, held on Friday, January 24, 2025, at the Accra International Conference Center at 6 p.m. sharp. And it will be on the theme Glory and Glory, a call for change in national orientation and investment in sport. Now, the prestigious and longest running awards event in Ghana, the Swag Awards, promises to be an unforgettable night of glamour, excitement, and a celebration of Ghana's sporting achievements. Now, in the event, we'll also bring together some of the topmost athletes, coaches, and officials, as well as sports enthusiasts, to recognize and reward excellence in sport. Come, let's celebrate sporting legends like never before with a big performance from Famille, your favorite. And of course, for tickets and sponsorship, you can just call 0244 280 802. 0244 280 802. Now, the 49th edition of the Swag Awards, another time to celebrate and honor the best to inspire the rest. The 49th Swag Awards is powered by the Event Factory and supported by the Multimedia Group. Gentlemen, let me just quickly run through the the 10-point agenda on the document, so we can have a clearer view of what we're talking about. So 10 key areas, okay? But the general policy is going to be focusing on 1, sports infrastructure; 2, sporting talents and human resource; 3, sports governance and administration ethics; lifelong participation and inclusivity; sports for economic and social development; and a framework for implementing the African Union's sports agenda for 2063 and the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals, for sport-related goals. Okay, so I'll quickly run through the 10 points, okay? 1, this government has promised via this document to support the development of Colts Division 1 and 2 and the Ghana Premier League by augmenting the salaries of all registered footballers as well as their allowances. Now, money is always good, and you can't go wrong when the money is good. So we'll talk about how that can be achieved. Number 2, undertake emergency refurbishment of pitches, tracks, and other facilities of the national stadia. I'm talking about Accra, Kumasi, Tamale, Cape Coast, and 2nd D to meet FIFA standards. 3, to pursue all long-standing policies of establishing international standard stadia in all regions. Okay. Number 4, build more multi-purpose sports facilities to promote regional sporting events and inter-school competitions as part of our talent development policy. Number 5, ensure equitable investments in the other national teams as well as women's football, para sports, juvenile teams, and lesser-known sports. And also, number 6 is upgrade the UEW, which is the University of Education Winneba Sports College, also known as the CK Gemfi Sports College, or the National Sports College, to a modern sports university offering training programs in sports-related medicine, science, and sports management, as well as administration at campuses around Ghana. Number 7, establish sports centers of excellence in the northern, middle, and southern zones in collaboration with existing universities and the private sector. Number 8, support national athletes more consistently to compete internationally and develop post-competition careers and pension schemes to cater for national athletes. Number 9, offer scholarships for promising sports talents to invest in the establishment of sports academies in partnership with the private sector. Number 10, to support retired sports personalities in pursuing other sports-related careers after active sporting life. So these are the 10 key, areas. Okay, so I am very interested in the money. So I'll repeat this. Some years ago, some senior journalists in sport were invited to the office of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. At the time, he was, the presidential candidate, and the conversation was to brainstorm on how to get a base salary paid by government to all clubs in the Ghana Premier League and in the lower division. So and the whole idea was to help retain talent and also improve the social standards and livelihoods of these footballers who play here. Okay, now question is, we are here now. How do we get this going, Doc?
Well, thank you very much. Now, it is to be understood that governance is about priorities.
Okay.
Our government is prioritizing sports, and you can even see that from the way it has been decoupled from the youth ministry. Now, it must also be understood that this is not just a social intervention where government is giving money out to what Premier League clubs without expecting any returns. It is a contractual-based agreement. I'm happy to inform that Galka has sent a blueprint, and I led the group that received that blueprint as to how much they expect that government will pay the Premier League clubs. Now, on that note, it is to be noted that it is an investment. We give the clubs these augmented allowances, and the clubs that subscribe to it, when their players get to have better football or deals abroad or international clubs that pay well, then they pay a percentage back to the government coffers. So the thinking is that it is to enhance the human resource development of these players so that they can make the Premier League competitive. It will attract more investment into the Premier League by ways of participation and other related sponsorship and funding, etc., etc. But at the end of it, it is not free money. It is money that if Nathaniel Attoh Football Club subscribes to it, then out of your club, Prof is a player, then he gets a deal to go to Chelsea or Liverpool. Part of the contractual agreement is that a part of his transfer fee comes into the fund that is going to be managed by both Galka and then the government.
So this is something you'd want to propose to the Ghana FA, because this obviously will lie within, their space to implement.
Well, clearly we have worked much more on this policy with Galka, and then we have had 4 meetings before the manifesto was drafted. After the manifesto was drafted, and when we won the election, we met with them, and finally I led the team to take a blueprint from them as to how much they expect to be paid to each Premier League club in the implementation phase. So we are working with Galka, but we can bring GFA in the implementation phase as well.
Okay, so this then means that if a very good talent here gets a chance to go and play in an advanced league, and there's a big transfer, there's a good amount that's coming. After all the other percentages that are deducted, there will be one that will be put into a fund.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the understanding here is that because we are a socialist-oriented political party, not all Premier League players who would benefit from this scheme would eventually get the opportunity of getting outside to have good deals that we can benefit from to ensure that it is sustainable. In that instance, we have committed ourselves to being responsible towards what? The footballers, and that is human resource. But if you play and you are opportuned to go out and have a good deal, the fund must be sustained. We are starting it, but at a given time, beneficiaries of the fund should be able to what? Let it evolve so that others would benefit. So that is how it is going to be implemented. And I guess that in due time, when the minister is appointed, the details would come out. Because I can't speak all of the issues now because a minister hasn't been appointed.
Yes, and that's why we're eagerly awaiting the announcement of who will be nominated to the rechristened Sports and Recreation Ministry. Absu, the rechristening, sports and recreation.
Yeah.
What for you will be the advantage of having sports and recreation ministry as against having the youth and sports ministry?
Okay, so let's look at why it was even sports and youth put together. I think the idea at that time was that, look, sports is done by the youth. So if you're developing the youth or if you're developing sports, vice versa, so why don't you put them together? If you remember at a point in time, we had even put it together with education. Okay. I think the NDC's move of taking the youth out of it, it's a smart one. Sports is recreation. If you remember in our primary school days in the 70s, whenever we had break where we go and do physical activity, then we say, okay, we're going out for recreation. So it's the same thing. Sports and recreation goes together. Maybe I'll qualify it a bit and say active recreation. They go together. Obviously, you can see then there will be more emphasis on the sports development. And now the youth has been taken and added to another ministry, which is also focused on employment. So once we are getting our youth, or what do we do to see a career growth for our youth? Then there's that section also. Then there's a lot of emphasis on the youth. We had a ministry of youth and sports where, the youth part of the ministry is normally lost to everybody. Nobody focuses on the youth development. Like I said earlier, the advantage of putting them together was because you could then develop sports or you're developing the youth because the youth are doing sports. What I see now happening, there'll be a lot more emphasis on sports, active recreation, and maybe physical activities. And these goes to increase the well-being of every nation. As you know, as part of the SDGs 3 that look a healthy body for everybody. And I think that separating the sports ministry from the youth ministry would allow us to channel a little bit more resources into sports, and then also give the other ministry the attention or the opportunity to focus a little bit more on youth activities. And youth activities, it's not just sports. But in the old ministry, we focus just sports activities by the youth. But there's so many challenges that the youth of our today faces. So especially youth after school. We remember not too long ago, people came together and said Association of Unemployed Graduates. So these are other challenges that our youth face that can now be properly addressed by a ministry that is focused more on youth and their progression through life.
Messages are very welcome. Remember, 055-11-11-997. 055-11-11-997. That's what we're going to be doing now as a way of communicating with you until we activate the phone line. So just make use of the WhatsApp platform and all of our other channels and all of our other platforms on social media. I'll be reading some of them in a little bit. So you send in your expectations and what you also are looking forward to in terms of what which of the areas will be tackled. There's a 10-point agenda. Which of them would you feel is most pressing that has to be worked on immediately if the nominee is eventually vetted and gets working? So it's a long conversation to have, and we'll try our best as much as possible to just get through all of the other points right here on the show. So we'll do a message, and after that, we come back here in the studio with Dr. Fred Awah, a member of the NDC Sports Manifesto Committee, and Mr. Ben Nunu Mensah. He is the president of the Ghana Olympic Committee.
Joy 99.7 FM. Ago Ghana, the Sports Rights Association of Ghana, SWAG, Gen 49th SWAG Awards, Nebraska, date Friday, January 24th, 2025, venue, the Accra International Conference Center, 6 p.m. sharp. Team, Gold and Glory, a call for changing national orientation and investment in sports. Kaise, Eba Awards are the Yaye Atwaswa Chepa, the SWAG Awards. Ni senti, ye shall was Edano, Ebe Fe, Ebe Nika, Ebe Nije, Yeton Safro, Beka Ewe, Nienfa Basumoma Pa, Enfama Wana Wabua, Ama Budi Winsome, Ejina Wakana. For sponsorship, for 0244-280-802, the 49 SWAG Awards. Another time to celebrate Anna, the best to inspire the rest. A 24th Accra International Conference Center, performing live the high life sensation Family. The 49th SWAG Award is powered by the Event Factory. Joy 99.7 FM.
All right, thank you very much for staying with us here on the Joy Sports Link on Joy 99.7 FM. 055 997 055 997 is for our WhatsApp platform. Join us with your thoughts and let's have this conversation together. Okay, so we're looking at the area of the money. Now, Mr. Beninu Mensah, you are in the corporate space, you're in business, and you have a lot of experience when it comes to big project financing. Clearly, this idea of funding or putting funds to ensure stable salaries in the Ghana Premier League and other leagues within the football ecosystem would come with funding. And at this time, we all do know what our situation is economically. We're having conversations with the IMF to restructure and, see the new direction. And so immediately getting big funds to start running a project like this could come as a challenge. Where do we draw the money from? Example, where do we draw the money from?
Now, I've always looked at the bigger picture of funding sports, not just maybe football. If we don't have a sustained or a constant revenue stream into our sport fund, like we have for Get Fund or the National Health Insurance Scheme, it would always be a problem. So what I see happening, it's somewhere along the line, government maybe putting a little bit of tax on alcohol, or maybe things that take away our health. Okay. The emphasis also would not only be on Premier League players, as you have said, but we're looking at all Ghanaians or any other people belonging to or playing for the national teams. In the past, what we have done to sustain most of our national team players is to create jobs for them, either in the military or in the public services. If you remember, most of our footballers were employed by one state organization or the other. Our boxers, Azuma, Nelson, Akwati, and all, they were employed in the police services or in the military. That is something that we would eventually also have to look at and put a little bit of focus. So if you have a few of your footballers playing or being employed by these state institutions, obviously there'll be any salaries from, and these state institutions employ these athletes or footballers. And now I'll make it broad so that it doesn't seem that we're only focusing, or the party's only focusing on football. No, we're looking at all Ghanaian athletes, not only football. So these athletes, if they're employed by, say, customs, they are employed with Ghana Police, they are not being employed to go and work or to do clerical duties, as you have it, but they are just being employed to go and just play for the national team, for which they are being paid. It also makes our Gusa games very competitive. So you realize that all the security services are trying to poach our players, our football players, our athletes from one club or the other. If you remember SS74, you remember Acotex, those were clubs that belonged to institutions. Acotex belonged to Akosomo Texas, and these players were being paid. So that is one other area that the government will also want to encourage, that as many companies will employ our footballers, our athletes as possible. The other thing that I see happening that will reduce the burden or the financial burden on government is to make sure that our scholarship scheme from international sports federations like the IOC or the international federations, we take advantage of these scholarship schemes. For instance, currently you have a lot of, as many as 12 of our national team athletes on Olympic scholarship. That is one area that we can also do, or we can look at to solve the financial burden that would otherwise would have fallen on the government. There's so many other ways, but once there's enough funding into the sports fund, I am sure government should be able to raise the necessary revenue. And as Doc explained earlier, this is not like free money. It's being put in a fund where we hope that these clubs will be truthful, will be sincere to us, and then when they have to pay back, or when they have to declare what they have earned, or what government share of what they have earned from the sale of player is, this is going to be very transparent. Yes, we know these clubs are privately owned, but it's the duty of government, especially when we're in Africa and our clubs are playing in Africa. You can see the kind of mileage it gives Ghana as a country. So it's not bad if government are supporting clubs, or if they are supporting players belonging to football clubs. It is good for the government, and if this is done and done very well, I think that you could see most of our clubs doing very well in Africa, unlike what is happening now, where we go in the initial stages and then we drop out.
Well, your thoughts are also very welcome and very important to the show, and that's the reason why you can send them through 055-11-11997, 055-11-11997. All right, so we have an idea of how we can raise the funding and make it sustainable, as you have said. Make it sustainable so that this then becomes an everyday thing, because obviously we're losing quite some amount of talent from our various leagues and from other disciplines as well, because at a certain stage they do not see the future here, and so because of that they have to go away. And recently I'd like to have my producer look for that soundbite and play it for us. It was so heartbreaking to hear young kids who were training at the University of Ghana, Tartan track, the track, the training track next to the stadium. And they were being asked about their ambitions. And they said, look, I want to go and run for the US. I want to go and run for Canada. These are kids who are in primary school and all of that, and who are taking fundamentals in athletics and track and field. And it was so painful, so disheartening to listen to them say these very innocent views to Muftar Nabila Abdullahi, who was on duty there one day and saw them training and decided to go and do a little piece on how the coach was training these young ones. So already, orientation-wise, these young, talented sports, boys and girls are now looking elsewhere to make it and be fulfilled.
So clearly it tells us about the issue of player exodus or athlete exodus. It is because we haven't put in place it's because we have not put in place systems to ensure that our players or athletes are motivated at home. And that the manifesto of the NDC, which is yet to be implemented, cures this in diverse ways. We have tried to cure that by saying that if you look at proposal number 8, for instance, we've said that we'll intentionally invest in athletes. It means that we are not giving chances that Nathaniel is studying in a university in America. Then we are going to the Olympics, and because you are an athlete, we are looking for you in America to come and run for us. In that instance, we as Ghanaians become vulnerable because we didn't invest in you. So making conscious efforts to invest in athletes would mean that you are giving them the needs and requirements that will make them committed to the country. So that clearly you would find in our manifesto promise number 8. What you see with our promise with the Premier League is also in line with that. Because why would an average Premier League player in Ghana want to go to play in Kosovo, Ethiopia, Egypt? Oh, not Egypt. Egypt is quite better when it comes to football, but now places like Tanzania, Eritrea, we have Ghanaians going in there. It is clearly because conditions of play back home is not good. That is what is getting into the minds of these young chaps who are already thinking that to be a better athlete, you have to be in another destination country but Ghana. But we are determined to cure all of this, and you would have seen that in our blueprint. And if just waiting for the announcement of the minister, and the details of this will be rolled out, and then you would see clearly the direction that the National Democratic Congress.
The announcement of the minister. I'll be checking, our consuls, and I'll be bringing in all the responses that you have brought in, and we'll be sharing with everybody else. So while we do all of this, kindly let me also know what your expectation is regarding who should be named to that ministry, which is the Sports and Recreation Ministry. Quite a number of nominations have been made by the president. We're starting the vetting of the next set on Tuesday, and vetting will be live on all of our platforms. But the primary focus for us here is who goes to the sports ministry and what your expectations are. Well, and if you send in your message, kindly indicate as well what your reasons are for nominating who you want to nominate. So I want all of you to put yourselves in the shoes of President Mahama and the nomination team from within the NDC and tell us who your preferred choice will be to lead the Sports and Recreation Ministry so they can implement this 10-point agenda and possibly even more over the next 4 years if the nominee or whoever is eventually confirmed is able to cross that mark. And you know, there was a certain time in our history where the sports ministry became a very, very slippery ground. You know, one which was cooking a lot of controversies. You know, ministers were slipping on various issues and all of that. You remember?
Yeah, it still is.
Is a slippery place?
Well, I don't think the ministry itself is that slippery. But now, you see, there's so many, at any given time of the day in Ghana, you can tune into about 5 radio space stations talking about sports. Sports is so much talked about on our airwaves that even when a pin drops at the ministry, it becomes news. So that is why, and that is what makes it slippery. But otherwise, it's just a normal ministry. They are not even well funded. I mean, from what has happened in the past. If you look at the kind of funding that goes to the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Local Government, and all the other ministries, the sports ministry is the second least funded ministry. But yet still, is the most spoken about ministry, you know. So that is what makes it slippery. But otherwise, it's a normal work. I mean, it's normal thing that every minister would do. And it's a normal ministerial work. But people speak so much about the sports ministry. It makes it very, very, very tricky to be at the helm of affairs at that ministry.
The youth and sports ministry and the perception around it.
Well, yeah, so in the past, youth and sports, now we have christened it as sports and recreation. Now, you see, you and I sit here. When they talk about higher education and you have no knowledge about it, you can't contribute. When they talk about health and you have no knowledge about it, you cannot contribute. But sports is something that everybody has at least a sport to do. Even if you have no sport to do, you have an idea about what the number of football players who should be on the pitch. That is what makes that ministry a kind of a heated one, because almost everyone has an opinion about the sports ministry. And if that happens, then clearly controversies are bound to occur within that ministry, and then tendencies that it will also. And clearly, if you also look at it very carefully, it is the ministry that has an association from your fraternity, Sports Writers Association of Ghana. It means that the media is always focusing its lenses on that ministry. I don't see other ministries like Ministry of Health, journalists of health, or journalists of education, but specifically you are a member of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana. And you know, for anything that comes out of the public domain, usually the media plays a key role. So if the Ministry of Sports has you have an eye on them, then clearly every little thing, like my elder brother said, even if a pin falls in there, it becomes news. So if you choose a minister who may not have all of the qualities intended to manage the place well, then things that should be harnessed in bids to benefit the ministry now become things of the news, and he sits there thinking of managing what is happening outside of the ministry whilst managing the ministry at the same time, and that becomes very problematic.
Well, yesterday, you know, the perpetrators of fake news put out a document which was later, you know, discredited by the presidency, you know, and the communications bureau.
And Nats, you guys in media always say that negative news sells.
Yeah.
Okay. There's so many good things that happen in our sports. Okay. Say they are 95. the 5 bad things that happens in sports is what makes the news. Okay, and because there are so many sports journalists, because at any given time, 1, 5, 10 radio stations are talking about sports, then that negative news gets blown out. So it's just to buttress the dog's point. The sports ministry is not as bad as it is as a ministry, but we make it seemingly look that slippery, and it's because we always would fly a lot of negative news that comes from the sports ministry. But before I want to make a point on what Doc has said about investing in the athletes and link it up to what somebody told Nabila at the Lagos Stadium. You see, so one of the areas where we're creating employment or we're investing in the athletes will be if an athlete finds out that, look, if I'm doing sports, it's an advantage for me to be employed in the military, in the police, in the immigration. Then you will realize that such an athlete, that's Nabila met them at Lagos, would have said, oh yeah, I'm doing sports because I know that if I excel, it's likely I could get employment in the military or in the police services. So the narrative is going to change. Once we start investing in these athletes and letting them see all the opportunities, especially for a career path, then it will change. He's not going to, I'm going to run for the US. No, it's okay. Yeah, I'm doing sports because I've seen my colleague who excelled has just been employed in the military. And we did that before. And it's something that we're hoping that if we go back to it, at least it could create employment for most of our athletes or our footballers. And that would be a good enough reason for our young children to stick to sports and stay into sports.
And talk about that, I just remembered one thing when you were making the point about defecting and, switching nationality and going to get opportunities elsewhere. I remember that during the era of the legendary Abedi Pele, when his sons were born and they were getting into football, there was a very, very big temptation for them to go and play for France, the under-17 team of national team of France. But then, Abedi Pele insisted that he wanted his children to play for Ghana. Well, and we've drawn quite some value from them, haven't we?
Yeah,
very well. That's true. Yeah. So clearly, I think now I grew up loving sports when I was still young. It does appear that within those times, the motivation for sports was more of patriotism. It was more nationalistic. Mm-hmm. It does appear within this period, the trends are moving towards economic value. And we, as a socialist-oriented political party, do think that much as the trends are changing, we can create the enabling environment for people to complement the issue of nationalism with what they can get for themselves and their families. Mm. So sports will not be seen just as a social entertaining enterprise like when we were young. Are we together?
Yeah.
But that beyond entertainment, it is business. Just like I am a lecturer and I draw from the University of Professional Studies, the one who represents Ghana in boxing should be able to feed his family and feed them well from boxing. The one who runs for Ghana should be able to do the same. The one who plays football should be able to do the same. So the issue of patriotism, yes, we know that used to be. We may want to try to bring it back, but the economic value for the player or the athlete is an emphasis for the new government, and we have to put that too on record.
Mm. This is the Joy Sports Link on Joy 99.7 FM. We'll be playing that sound bite very shortly. So it brings all of us to our reality in the year 2025 and the enormity of the task ahead of the NDC government when it comes to rehashing and resetting sport. We're told that the word resetting, as was highlighted by Uncle Ibohwa during the week, that reset is the new expression for the year 2025, and it seems to be flying not only in the political space but everywhere, but was sped on by the political space. So we're trying to reset the sports sector, and now we have certain realities that confront us. So we're also looking at how we can realistically confront these and get ourselves up to go. Well, sadly, we're starting the year 2025 knowing that we will not be answering the roll call at the Africa Cup of Nations. That's bad enough. We are not playing. We're not playing in some major tournaments as well. We haven't qualified for. At the level of the Black Queens as well. We're going, but then the sad thing is that the coach who we had so much confidence in has switched camp to Zambia. There are so many details for the macro management element, or the nitty-gritty element to be dealt with. But we'll come to all of that later. All right, but let's just take a listen to this conversation that Muftar Nabila Abdullahi had with these kids who were training. And I must say once again that these are very, very honest and, very, very honest opinions from these young ones based on the stimulus and what they've been exposed to in terms of sports content here growing up in Ghana.
Just running because I like running. Because I'm very fast. That's why my father allows me to come and run. Because I like to run and just being able to meet new people and yeah. So yeah.
What are your ambitions? What goals do you have in athletics?
To be a 200 world champion. I want to look up to Gabby Thomas because she's a very fast runner. She wins a lot of goals, and I want to run for America.
You want to run for America, not Ghana?
No.
Why?
Because if you run for America, you get more gold medals.
I think it's just the morning drive that you want to know that in life you're going to make it, and that if you're going to get through some stuff, you have to be strong, tough, and you have to have because I'm here to lose weight. So I want to exercise a lot to be strong.
My father said that I should run and I should run for USC.
I'm mostly shot put, javelin, and field. So I'm also trying to get a little bit of track just to make myself more stronger.
So there's the evidence. So the young people whom we're targeting to fill in these spaces and take over, and some of these policies targeted at, are already looking out of here, because obviously the trend that we have run over the years has oriented them such that they have to look out there or elsewhere for opportunities, and that in itself is something we would have to deal with.
No, not. I do think that on this same medium, we looked at the issues of potentials of the growing youth of Ghana.
Yes.
And then how we can harness that for the sports development of our country. If you recall, I gave an example of table tennis. On this same, I was seated somewhere around here.
Yeah.
And I said that it's not everything about sports that entails money. Leadership is very, very essential. So if you have a sports minister that understands that beyond the budgetary allocation, in the world, the country, the destination that does good tennis is China and Korea. Yet we have bilateral relations. We are in a community of nations. Scholarships intended for our young people to study in China and Korea should be targeted towards what? Table tennis. So like that young lady who just spoke, the orientation is that she will do well in America. We have no problem with our people being in America to take advantage of all of the nice facilities to excel. In this instance, there must be an understanding between government and the parents of this young chap.
Not only facilities, but then we do know that away from facilities as well, there's a good competitive structure, there's sponsorship, and there are platforms for you to excel away from just the money.
Yes, clearly so. So it's the same conversation we are having. So that if you have a Ghanaian talent like the one that just spoke, and government makes commitment, okay, to say, okay, we realize that a lot can come out of you that Ghana can benefit from. So we are putting you in a college system in the United States of America, but you are not going there as an American. You are a Ghanaian, we'll put the appropriate investment in you, but you are going to run, flying the flag of what? Ghana. It means that we are ready to make that level of investment or commitment. Now, remember that beyond physical money, I was using the China example because we're talking about table tennis. We now go back to the example, the voice that we heard. She's an athlete. And clearly the destination for good athletes, one of them is the United States of America. So if she is funded funding here would mean we may get a scholarship. It's not every movement for sports that must come from the coffers of what? Government. There are instances that we would have to do that. I'm speaking so because of your preamble of resource constraints. So you look for alternative sources of income, look for the talents, and then find, just like other industries. In my career, when government or your university knows that you are a potential, they can take you to the best of the universities in the world, but you are bonded. After a while, come back and serve what? The university. So we have diverse avenues of thinking to ensure that, but I must admit that there is the need for a national reorientation, that it's not, Ghana is not a no-no for sports. There are opportunities here, and we are also willing to make commitments that would entail partnerships to let our talents thrive.
Now, let me add to what Doc just said. You see, about having or sponsoring athletes to go train in countries where there are much better facilities. This is something that is already being done by GAA and then a few other sporting disciplines. What government would then have to do is to encourage these national federations so they can have more university opportunities for, I mean, as Amati and all the others, they are in school in the US. That's how come they all got there. Some of them from the Ghana Athletics Association, from Ghana Fastest, from Ambassador Lutrot, from Mr. Wisdom Low, you know. So government would need to identify these people and then see where they can be of much bigger help to them, so we can get most of our athletes in the in countries where they have much better facilities. But not going back to the little girl story. You see, the biggest problem we have with our national team athletes, not the footballers, it's the little motivation that they don't get. Now, this little girl that you spoke to at the Legon Stadium, if this girl, you know, had the opportunity to say meet the sports minister at, you know, like a regular athletics event, kids athletics event, you know the kind of impression it puts on the girl? Because of athletics, she's gotten the chance to shake hands with the minister. What do we have in the past? We have teams go out there to go and compete, they win medals, they come, and there's nobody even at the airport to welcome them. But trust me, if football went out there and came back with a wooden medal, you see all the people in the ministry, the NSA, jumping over each other to be at the airport to welcome them. So, you see, the least encouragement that we can even give to our children who are doing the other sports, it's not there. If we can change the narrative and give a little bit more, maybe encouragement or motivation to this, their narrative will change, their stories will change. They will want to stay. Everybody's proud of his or her country. But you see, when the little effort that you're putting in is not being recognized or is not being appreciated, then there's the motivation to move out. But not, like I said, it's going to change, and I'm sure that we will get these young people motivated enough to want to run for Ghana.
Motivated enough to run for Ghana. Well, we'll see about that. Let's keep it going, keep the messages coming, and very shortly I'll be activating the phone line as well, so you can join us. Tell us who you want to nominate to go to the Youth and Sports Ministry. Who do you want?
Sports and Recreation.
Yes, Sports and Recreation Ministry. Sports and Recreation Ministry. I've had quite a number of names fly around. I've had loads of conversations around these, and others have also told me what they believe will be who they believe will be the eventual nominee. What kind of effect is that going to have on this newly christened ministry as well, and what the plans are, going forward. Okay, there's this talk about the University of Education Winneba, the National Sports College within the University of Education Winneba. Now, Mr. Abba Fuseni, who has had a very long run leading Ghana Athletics, and now has this opportunity there. And we've had a conversation with him already. He already has an excellent plan. He's already set things in motion, and there is the space available for infrastructure. Now then, we need the money. But another thing I need to ask, and for you to clarify, developing a place into or an existing educational institution into a university. Walk us through it for those who are not familiar with the space, because we've had previous governments say that they want to establish universities. We haven't seen it implemented. We are seeing this appear in this manifesto, and within the next 4 years, would want to see something done. So kindly walk us through what the process will be in establishing a full-fledged technical university that that has the capacity to train these individuals. Already something has started at the National Sports College.
Okay, so as part of the activities towards the elections, my team and I went in there. And then we had, I think we made a documentary that was about some 4 or 5 months ago. Sincerely, the place wasn't a true reflection of what anyone would call a national sports college. The hostel facilities that were built intending to host sports persons at the college now are being used as hostels for the University of Education as a source of internally generated fund. Now, you would find places that were earmarked for hockey. Trees have overgrown. The traditional plan for the soccer pitches, there are 4. Now, it's only 1. The rest of the 3 are just bush or forest. And the one that is in...
At least we don't have... Do we have any cases of encroachment there? No encroachments?
No, not much as I know.
Okay.
Yeah. And the existing pitch there, one of the goalposts was supported by a tree wood. There. So clearly it tells us that the National Sports College is in an excessively deplorable space. Place where the tennis court is, weed had overgrown and they had sprayed with weedicide, and you would see clearly that. But now we talk about the issue of getting a university. You would need a charter.
Of course.
And that largely has to do with the Ghana Education Trust Fund, the processes of converting it for a National Sports College to a university. It's a whole process, and that shouldn't be difficult to do. The reality is that the space is enough for every kind of infrastructure that we would need for, like I said, in the original plan, soccer pitches are already supposed to be 4, and I think that is a good start. Now, remember also that the intention is to have campuses in other parts of our country. So it's just that is the headquarters. That is the main campus. So all of that are in the plan, but for the processes, those are relative to paperwork, and then that has to do with processes that will be at the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to ensure that we would have met all of the requirements of being a full-fledged university.
Mr. Ben, you wanted to make a point.
I just want to drum home, a picture that has been painted by Doc here on our culture of maintenance. Winneba College have had directors or people who have been in charge since it was set up. Why has the place been allowed to run down to this level? And that is something that we need to address as a nation. If we're going to put our sports infrastructures and then we don't have any knowledge on how, or we refuse to maintain them, then 8 years down the line, we're going to talk about the same story like he just narrated about the Winneba Sports College. We need to put people who have ability to make things happen in our institutions. We need to put round pegs in round holes.
So now you agree with me that who goes to the sports ministry will matter?
Of course,
a great deal.
It matters based on the person's knowledge and ability, and then the willingness to do something for the country. Yeah. You see, if you put somebody in charge of a place and you say, okay, you are a director of this, you're a director of that, okay, and then whatever happens, he or she gets his salary. There are no timeline, there are no deliverables. Just give the place. Of course, this doesn't happen in the private sector. You will work your back out, whatever you're being paid, you have to earn it, and that is the attitude that government has to take now. There are so many regional directors from the National Sports Authority. We need to reorient them. We need to say, look, you are a general manager, and for that reason, you are responsible for raising funding for your institution. You have to make sure that the place is run. Think outside the box. Think of what you can do. Look at NSA for a long time. This is an institution where, or this is an institution where if we allowed it or if it was run properly, should be self-funding. They have so many facilities, so many infrastructures. But yes, so what is the internally generated funding by the NSA? The NSA was set up with a different, well, of course, it was a different era where we needed an institution to manage our national federations. But it's no longer like that. The national team, the national federations are managed by the NFs. What is the core mandate of the NSA now? That we need to look at as a nation. The NSA, as I believe now, is managing the stadiums. Is that enough? Why don't we redefine the mandate of the NSA? Then we can be able to take care of some of these infrastructures that are left to rot. Yeah, that's it.
Let's read the message. It's from Nana Kwesi. Nana Kwesi says, Nathaniel, I wouldn't advise none of my family members and friends to represent Ghana in any sporting activity. This is not a result of bad orientation, but it's evidence-based. Ghana for decades is not a good example when it comes to sports development. Now, Ghana is the definition of wasting talent. Ghana has talent in abundance, but how many make it out? Not even one. Okay, how many make it out? Now, not even 1%. So if you really want to have a chance to utilize a talent and live off it, Ghana must be your last option. Call it negativity, but it wouldn't defeat the reality with Ghana. Part of the reasons our ladies lost a good coach is because they couldn't make available just $40,000 for competitive friendlies ahead of a major tournament, an amount paid as appearance fee to the Black Stars. Is this a serious country with our talent? Nana Kwesi, thank you very much for that message there. Would read a few more and then would carry on with some of the responses. This is from Nitojo from Tema Newtown. Sports and Recreation Ministry, it's good we value recreation. Let's work for the country's progress. Thank you very much. This is from Nitojo in Tema Newtown. Thank you very much. Now there's another one here. Okay, so this one reads, okay, let me just read this one. There's one part of your message. I don't know if you've signed your message. I'll still go ahead and read it, but there's a part of the message I wouldn't want to read because it has a very big slant of negativity, which I would not condone on the show. Okay. Okay, so all of the sources of funding by Mr. Benunumes are neither being done already or have been done in the past and are no more sustainable, and therefore they collapse. Where are the textiles manufacturing companies, for instance, Dumas, Acotex, Juantex, and Tegitex? Where is Gehok, who had Ghana Khan or Gehok Stars? Wilson in Capitol Hill. Wilson, thank you very much, but I declined reading the first part of your message for that reason that I have, that reason that I have already given. All right, so 05511119997. 05511119997. We'll activate the phone line very, very shortly in just about 5 minutes. So you can have conversations with us. Yes.
Let me say, we must have lost the Acotex, the Dumas, and all the other stuff, but we still have companies in Ghana. Okay. In the past, we used to have our national teams were adapted by one company. You remember when Mobile would do sports, Milo would do tennis. I mean, we can still go back to that. The fact that Acotex is no longer there, there are still companies who can then adopt our national team and say, look, boss, look at boss, NLA, GNPC. We can say, look, GNPC, from today to go, by presidential order, please make sure that you're taking care of all the needs of the national athletic teams. Boss, you also do same for the national weightlifting team. Ghana Gas, do same for the national hockey teams. Okay, so their social corporate responsibility budget or maybe their marketing budget, they can channel some to support these national teams. That's what I'm asking for. No government on its own has been able to sustain its sports. They will always have to look outside. That's why in Britain you have the sports lottery. It's something that was done in the past by E.T. Mensah. I remember when the Akoko pay all, you know, it was good, but it got to a point in time they were not paying what they should be paying to the sports ministry, so E.T. Mensah had to call it off. But these are things that, yes, you might have done some of them in the past, but because they were not properly managed, can we look at them and see if we can manage them better and be able to get much better results than we had in the past?
Well, interesting stuff there. Now, there is also a very a big capital-intensive project that this government wants to undertake, and that is our existing stadia and making sure that they are upgraded to FIFA standard, and obviously will pass to host CAF international standard CAF games as well. We have struggled over the period. The very last set of controversial issues had to do with pitch management, which was a very big national embarrassment, and it had to take a lot of interventions in the background to have Ghana host her last qualifiers for the AFCON here in Ghana. And to think that we were able to get work done and get the pitch in the condition it was in at the last time the Black Stars played here in Accra at the Accra Stadium, then it just tells you that people exist, they can get the job done, but for one reason or the other, they just don't want to get it done. I just don't understand, because the players came back, the same set of players came back, and they said, look, this pitch is looking good. This is the kind of surface we want to play on. So now we want to get our stadia back to that, so that we do not have to be running around anytime there's a fixture to honor, an assignment in our stadia. So, of course, amongst the four major ones, we do know that Second D is in a very, unfortunately, and a very, very sorry state. Then you go to the Aliu Mahama Stadium, and we've named this stadium in Tamale. We've named it after somebody who gave off his life in public service and devoted himself and had a very good example in terms of public service. And now we've placed his name on the stadium, and there it is. It's not premium.
Nat, see, our maintenance culture, like we have said in the past, is still a problem. Okay, now, constructing infrastructure for our sports discipline, that is one area that maybe government will want to work with as many international federations as possible. Every international federation has funding for infrastructures, depending on how you relate with them. You spoke about the Ali Mama Stadium. I'm sure if the FA went to FIFA, or the FA would constantly be getting money from FIFA for infrastructure development. Okay, swimming would always get money from FINA if we went to them with the right approach, especially when these international federations pay a visit to your country and they get a chance to meet the head of state. The head of state makes a demand on swimming president. Can you give us 2 swimming pools? Trust me, it is done. Okay, so government will begin to take advantage of these international federations who would help us to construct most of our infrastructures. After it's been done, for instance, if you have a swimming pool, I would on any day wish that pool is left with the management by the Ghana Swimming Authority. If it's a football pitch, let's leave it in the hands of the GFA. If it's a boxing ring, because these federations would then be able to go back on their IFs if they have to maintain the structure. They will just make sure that these infrastructures are there for them, because it is their focus. For instance, if the Bukom Boxing Arena was being managed by Ghana Boxing, they know they host competition there almost every weekend. They would do whatever they can, of course, with some little support from government, and make sure that the place is well kept. So we may have to think about giving some of these infrastructures, especially those that are done by the international sports federations, to be managed by the national sports federations.
Jessica Nadenta has sent a message. He says, I feel like Ghana and America are 2 peas in a pod. Think of how the American football team or soccer team is not well known around the world, just like the Ghana Black Stars. Well, that's not exactly a fact. the U.S. men's national team, or the women's national team for that matter, are very well known around the world. We have to get back to that message from Jessica in Adenta. Let's go back to that message from Jessica in Adenta. I just quickly want to wrap that message up. And then it says, we're not putting too much importance on our talent. Okay, Jessica, thank you so much for that message. Thank you so much. Let's now go to this one. It's coming from Wilson in Capitol Hill again. And he says that some of the old companies collapsed because they engaged in other activities other than business. Now, secondly, Mr. Benunu Mensah said he was going to access funding from the IOC to build the Olympic Sports Stadium at Amasamang. This was a campaign message. Okay, so I am talking about the party in power, and their manifesto, which they've given to all of us. It's a public document. Now, Mr. Benunu Mensah, the last time he went on a personal campaign was when he was running for a second term as GOC president. Mr. Benunu Mensah, can you please respond to this message? Was it during your, or you added it to what was being done? By the party? Okay, so please kindly clarify
Amasaman, for us. We've gotten funding from IOC. If you go to Amasaman now, there's a football pitch which Polo Academy.
Well, he says he's talking about an Olympic stadium.
No. Amasaman, in fact, people get it wrong. Amasaman is not going to be an elite stadium. Okay. It's the whole idea about the Olympia Africa Center is to provide an avenue where undiscovered talents or youth go and discover their talents, and then they are helped. When they become elite athletes, then they can move out. But Amasaman is not going to be an Olympic stadium. That's why currently we have a tennis court there, we have a multi-purpose court there, we have a volleyball court where the community, the schools within Amasaman, that's where they have their inter-schools competition. It's still work in progress. We're looking at funding for a sports hall there, but gradually we're getting there.
Okay.
What are the key, indicators for IOC to continue to give that kind of support, or that quantum of support?
Well, once you have a good relationship with the Olympia Africa Center, and then once the funding, you use the funding for the purpose for which it is meant for, you can always go back the next year and then try and get something. But what I said earlier on wasn't IOC per se. I'm saying that international sports federations all have funding that they give to national federations for construction of facilities. It depends on your relationship with the president or the executive or the IFs. And especially when they visit your country, you can make these demands on them, and it's done. I mean, for the African Games, there were so many things, or there were so many IF presidents that the minister had met then, and then they had promised to come help with our infrastructure, but unfortunately there were no follow-up, so those things were not done. I'm saying that every national federation here can take advantage of their relationship with the international federation and at least get one form of infrastructure done by them or the other. I know swimming is still looking for a land to come put up a swimming pool for us. That has not been finalized. It's the same thing. You speak to Hockey International, you speak to virtually all the international federations. They are ready to support every country, so long as you know how to keep your language and how to entice them to support you.
All right, let's activate the phone lines now. 0302-216-541, 0302-216-541, and 055-11-11997. So once again, 0302-216-541, or +233-30-221-6541, and also plus 233-55-11-11997. Finally, 0302-216-541 and 055-11-11997. Okay, we've covered the areas of infrastructure. We've covered the areas of, education and, the technical element. Let's now just go into some everyday conversations. And of course, when you call, would want you to also tell us who you want to see at the Sports and Recreation Ministry. It's a big conversation that is ongoing, so would ask of you and tell us what your expectation is. So just call us 0302-216-541 and 055-11-11997. All right, so we've covered all of these areas, and hopefully by the end of this week we should have a nominee for the sector. But let's just quickly do this message. All right. I think with the precarious nature of our sports, particularly in the last 8 years in football, athletics, as well as boxing, which gave the country worldwide fame for decades. The new government needs to get a strong-willed and forthright character at the newly created ministry. It's just rechristened, but sports has always been there to rescue that sinking ship. I beg your pardon. Now, sports is a dynamic economic venture which can add billions of cedis to our ailing economy and create sustainable jobs for the teeming number of unemployed youth in this nation. Citizen Sika Togo, University of Ghana. Okay, thank you very much, Citizen Sika Togo. And that will take us to our first call. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the Joy Sports Link.
Good afternoon, Matt.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks for asking.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.
I don't care who is appointed as sports minister, Nathaniel. What I care about, and the only language I understand right now, is results. Results. That's the only language that I understand right now. I tell you, for 3 decades and counting now, it's been grammar, beautiful grammar from these two parties. So when you speak grammar to me right now, of a good time, yes, massive before. When you go here saying. So the only language I understand right now is results. I don't care whoever they put there. At the end of the 4 years, let's say, even though you're 100%, but you say things have been put in place, and at the end of that 4 years, they are seeing glimpses of the results. That is the language I understand. So nice conversations today, nice discussion about the plans and all, but let's hope it doesn't end like we've been experiencing already, because they are part of it. So
very well.
We are here.
Very well. Very well. Thank you very much. 0302216541, 0302216541, and 05511119997. Well, very, very blunt and straight to the point. I don't care who goes there. I want to see results, because we've heard so much of the English. So they say I come and sit here and I have very good shows. We speak a lot of good English, but now they want to see results.
I think it takes us back to the conversation we started. At the commencement of this show, you asked who should be named the minister. And I think what I said was consistent with what my elder brother here also said, that we shouldn't be looking at names now. We should be looking at the target. What's the vision of NDC for the sports sector? So that if the vision of the sports sector is that which entails some specific requirements, then you will now look at those characters in a human. Say, okay, this portfolio, we think that by the qualities of Nathaniel Attoh, when we give him this portfolio, he should be able to what? Do it. So for instance, you are looking at a minister who will build the National Sports College. Are we together? You are looking at a minister who will drive the payment of allowances for the Premier League, what? Clubs. You are looking at a minister who would ensure that sports is diversified from just football to other what? Competitive sports. You are looking at a minister who would drive the building of infrastructure. You are looking at the minister who would ensure that retired sports persons their strengths are harnessed for national development. All of that come with some qualities. Are we together?
Sure.
And those qualities are those that the president will be looking out for him. It's not just about name. It is about qualities that embedded in a human that can drive the 10 key thematic agenda of the National Democratic Congress. So I agree with the caller that it is about results and what? Output. It's not about names. It's not about who is famous. It's not about who is popular. It's not about who people like. It is about one who has the capacity to deliver on the promise of the government.
Okay. All right. Let's take a listen to this one as well. Nat, good afternoon, good show. And Ghana sports will change and depends on who comes to the Sports and Recreation Ministry, the NSA, and the GOC. Monthly allowance should be extended to boxing and athletics. Thank you very much. This is from Mr. Balfuseni. Thank you so much. Let's see how things will go. So he sees a lot in terms of how the leadership of the NSA, the GOC, of course the GOC, Mr. Benunu Mensah is there, so there's still a lot of expectation on his shoulder. All right, so let's now get back to the phone line. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. This is Joseph.
Oh, great. Good. How are you doing?
By the grace of God, how about you?
Oh, I'm great. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the good work you are doing for God and country.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Hi to President Nunu Mensah and Dr. Alawa. I like the point Dr. Awa just raised before I came in. But I would also like to add my voice that the personality actually counts. The personality actually counts because, yes, most of the time, Ghana, we don't lack policies. I have a boss who always raises this point, Mr. Frank Mobila, Accra North Area Manager of SNIT. He always says that Ghana, we don't lack policies. The implementation is always the problem. So if you don't have somebody who will believe in your vision and therefore will drive towards it and bring anybody at all, you end up throwing yourself in the bush or whatever. I personally listened to President Mahama, and he talked about why he separated the youth from the sports. And he raised the point that the sports, youth and sports ministry, we always concentrate on the sports. And even with the sports, we were concentrating on black stars, leaving the other least financed sports. So the educational aspect of it will come to add some bite. And I'm somebody who believes that the quality of your logical frame is what will determine the efficiency of your work. So I'll go in for somebody like Lawyer Ernest Thompson. Lawyer Ernest Thompson is an all-round person. Okay. If you look at the goodwill he left with House of Folk as the former board secretary, if you look at the contribution he made as the former management committee member of the Black Stars, and even the Bukom boxing arena, you could feel that within football he's there. And he also thought about the boxing and therefore the least financed sports. So we need somebody like that who understands the idea of what the current administration is bringing up, and therefore the manifesto committee the box to make sure that it comes out as expected. But if we bring anybody at all, we will end up singing the same song. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Interesting. So at least we have one name, and it's a familiar name. So Mr. Ernest Thompson, that's very, very interesting, and this is someone who has great experience when it comes to the sports sector. There's no doubt about his credentials and some of the very positive ideas he's got to add to it. Okay, so keep the calls coming in. Keep the calls coming. Let's all have this conversation together. Now, let's away from the policy. There are some key things happening. For instance, how the new minister, the new ministry, the minister under the new direction would relate with the FA. Whether we like it or not, the FA is a key element or a key structure within our sporting associations whose work and whose success will also have a certain ripple effect. It's just like they say, Asante Kotoko and Hearts of Oak have a positive ripple effect on the league when they're performing well. But before that, I'll come back to our caller. And of course, what I wanted us to drive at is some of the key issues that have happened. We know we're not going to the AFCON this year, but we have an opportunity to save ourselves from the, as we go into the next set of qualifiers, 2 games to be played in March. Yes, the ladies have the senior female team have lost their coach to Zambia. That's a very big one. We have a new coach here now to lead us into competition. We'll be talking about all of those in a second. But let's take a listen to our next caller. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon. Nata.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, my name is Richard Aholo. I'm calling from Cape Coast, listening to you live on ATL.
Very well, very well.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
And ATL is projecting Joy FM here the central region very well.
Very well. We're glad. We're so glad about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And going on to them, I want to know if Mr. Nunu, is he, you are the one who invited him, or he came there by himself to project what the government has for the sport?
Okay. First of all, I would answer your question. I need you to ask your question again, and I need you to be very clear. You're asking me if I invited Mr. Benunu Mensah here into the studio.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the second part of your question was what? All right. Thank you very much. Okay, so you've asked the question. Let me just quickly go to it so we continue with the rest of the show. Yes, we invite our guest here into the studio. And Mr. Benunu Mensah and Dr. Fred Awa are no strangers to this show. Number two, do remember that we have a certain focus for the conversation as we have started the year. And so, it is important that we get people who are aligned to the kind of conversation we want to have. Mr. Benunu Mensah, however you would want to describe him, he has many, what do they call them? Many wings and many aspects to his life as an individual. You probably may identify him as a politician. I, at this point, am identifying him maybe as a politician, but most importantly, as the president of the Ghana Olympic Committee. When we started the show, I spelled out his credentials. I don't know what time you joined us, but I spelled out his credentials, and that one is not my creation. It is what does exist. I've spelled out Dr. Fred Awa's, credentials as well. So that is what we do here, and that's what we've been doing since I joined this company some 15 to 16 years ago. And those are our standards. We never go down on those standards. Every week we bring a relevant subject, something that you are talking about, and something that we have expertise to discuss, to educate you better. So that's the reason why we have this set of guests that we have in the studio. And that's the reason why I also want your views as we discuss these issues. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll squeeze and see if we can get maybe one more or two more people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, look, there are so many things happening at the moment. Loads and loads of things. So, clearly, whoever takes over at the Sports and Recreation Ministry would still have that element of the Ghana FA's relationship to manage. And based on that, other disciplines and other associations would benefit, right?
That's clearly true. And I think I should inform that even when we were still campaigning, we made efforts to keep relationship with all of the federations and associations. We had ample meetings with them. So whoever becomes a minister is not going to be working in isolation, because he comes on the ticket of the National Democratic Congress. And as a campaign group, or thematic group for sports, we had engaged these thematic groups ahead of time. So reality is that, yeah, it's true, your proposal is not wrong. You would need some enhanced relationship with the federations and associations in bids to ensure that you work well towards harnessing all of their efforts to achieve laurels for Ghana. I agree.
Mr. Ben.
And now let me just add a quick one based on what Inko said. I think the NDC is blessed with a lot of men and women who are very much on top of sports issue. I mean, he just mentioned Ernest Thompson, great guy, and he runs across. So I'm sure President Mahama, in his own wisdom, would find the right person based on what he wants to achieve. The NDC has so many men and women who are very, very well versed in sports. I mean, you just mentioned Ernest, who I work with at Accra. So he's a great guy, and so are the others who potentially could lead our ministry. All right,
so we ran out of time. Still some things to cover, but I'm sure we're going to transfer that onto television and all our other platforms. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Doc, and thank you so much, Mr. Benunu Mensah. We're looking forward to that announcement, and after that, we're going to task heavily the rest of you who have been placed in the saddle to ensure that this works. The 10-point agenda we have, and we're going to make sure that we look at every single aspect of it and keep ticking the time. Today is what? Today is 18th January. Okay, so today is 18th January. The clock has started ticking already, and we'll be looking forward to seeing some positive things happen. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Well, you've been listening to the president of the Ghana Olympic Committee, Mr. Ben Mensah, and Dr. Fred Awa. He is a senior lecturer at the University of Professional Studies, as well as a member of the Sports Manifesto Committee of the ruling NDC. At the time, they were still looking forward to our votes to come into power. So that's it, and thank you so much for listening. There's still a lot to discuss in the coming weeks as we get ourselves ready, see who's performing well internationally, so we can get ourselves prepared for the next set of games that will be played in the FIFA World Cup qualifiers for 2026. Well, coming up shortly will be the Joy Headline News at 2 with Mami Nyamiche Thompson. Well, I'll be back next week, God willing, to bring you another Joy Sports Link. In the meantime, you all stay well, have a wonderful weekend, and of course, once again, our hearts go out to gospel musician Empress Gifty, who's burying her mother today, and also engineer Ajay Jan, aka Glovus, who's an ardent listener of this show. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks to the whole production team. We'll be back next week. Mami Nyamiche Thompson takes over. My name is Nathaniel Attoh, and I have love for sport.